If you can just learn to ignore these answers, it's going to save you time and boost your score up to 50 points in the English section. So in this video, I'm going to teach you 6 of the most common distractor answers to look out for, starting with number 1, too broad. And a distractor answer that is too broad is generally going to take something that is somewhat true from the passage, and it's going to expand it to a place that is not supported by the text. And I definitely encourage you to pause the video and read this first. But basically, this passage is all about how these guys are studying people who like to try and snatch snacks before anybody else does, right? And if we look down here, it says their goal is to figure out whether these tactics could provide insights into broader economic behaviors. So they're trying to take these decision-making skills affiliated with people who snatch up snacks and see if they can apply it to broader economic behaviors, which is going to be basically choice A. Now, choice D here is going to be our too broad distractor answer, which is saying that they have found social interactions play a critical role in shaping human decision making. This is partially true, right? Because it's talking about decision making in relation to this competitive snack selection. The problem is it says social interactions play a critical role. While this one social interaction may play a substantial role, this is too broad because it's applying it to all social interactions. So that's an example of a too broad distractor answer. Next up, we've got too narrow. This is going to be the opposite of too broad. And again, pause the video and read this first, but let's look at C and see why it is actually too narrow. So first of all, this is a main idea question. If we look at choice C, this is actually true. It says playing retro video games is associated with heightened charisma, but the exact cause is still unclear. We have very clear evidence of this. It says these gamers who frequently play retro video games have an unusual high level of riz, which is this effortless charisma. And it says, though the reason for the correlation remains unclear. So that is true, but it is not our answer because it's not the main idea. It is a detail. So basically, these two narrow distractor answers are going to be a detail when you're looking for a big picture answer. And for those of you keeping score at home, the actual answer is going to be choice A, that they're investigating how retro gamers' charisma might provide insights into social adaptability. Our third distractor type is out of scope. And out of scope means that there's information that is not actually in the text or supported in any way in the text.
Where's the evidence?
Now, the reason these tend to be distracting is that they are something that you can infer most of the time. And even though technically we have an inference question here, you need to remember that inference questions on the SAT still need to have full support from the text. So if we look at choice D, and I probably sound like a broken record, but make sure to pause the video and read this first. But anyway, if we look at choice D, it says, the widespread success of NES suggests that it caused a drop in popularity of other home entertainment options. This would make sense. If there is a boom in some sort of entertainment, you would think that there might be a drop off in other types because it's replacing it. This is something we can infer. But again, we need explicit support from the text. So this is going to be a distractor that is out of scope. That is to say, it is not supported by the text itself. It is not mentioned in the text itself. Instead, the answer for this one is going to be choice A, because indeed, we know that it is making gaming more appealing to a broad audience beyond traditional arcade enthusiasts, which is exactly what choice A is saying. Our fourth distractor type is going to be the opposite of the correct answer. And I know what you're thinking. Hey man, how is that even a distractor? Why would I ever choose the opposite? Well, these actually do get a little bit tricky because they tend to include words or phrases that you're looking for, but then there is a negating word that actually makes them untrue because they become the opposite. So for this question, which I hope you already paused and read, we have a detailed question about, what is being suggested about Hobbit society. And I think we can mostly get this just from the first sentence. It says Hobbit society is often thought of as insular and uninterested in the outside world. But, transition word, some historians argue that this perception is misleading. And then we go and get examples of that. So basically what's being suggested is the opposite of this, that Hobbit society is not necessarily insular and maybe is interested in the outside world, which is going to be our correct answer, choice B. So A is the opposite of this, saying it has traditionally rejected outside influences. And this, again, might be tempting because if we see this part and we don't notice the negating but, we run into this issue where we think we've found our answer. So be on the lookout for opposite answers as well. Our fifth common distractor type is going to be absolute or extreme answers. And after you pause the video and read this one, let's look at choice C, which is our extreme answer. And it is extreme because it says inevitably replace all. These are examples of absolute language. If something is inevitable, it means it's going to happen no matter what. All is all or nothing, right? So when I talk about absolute, it's black or white. There's no middle ground. There's no nuance. It's either one way or the other, and it's extreme, right?
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
So we could get rid of choice C because it's so extreme. And then finally, we have what I refer to as distorted distractor answers. And the thing that makes these guys so tricky is that they tend to be partially true, but then they distort the answer with some erroneous information that usually comes after the fact. So pause the video and read this one before you look at choice B here. But let's look at choice B here. It says, the main purpose of the text is to explain that penguins engage in elaborate courtship behaviors. This sounds so good because, oh my gosh, we have word for word exactly what we're looking for, right? Yay, we found the right answer.
But don't get too excited.
Because after that, we have which are identical across all species. And if we look at the text, this is not explicitly stated anywhere. And I would say the second half of this falls into the out of scope category, which is going to be the case for a lot of these distorted answers. But the reason that I give them their own separate category is they tend to have something that is very true and very tempting right up front. And yes, for those of you who are wondering, it is going to be choice C for this one. Now that you know what those distractor answers look like, you need to get some practice in. And right now I'm actually offering free access to my SAT Success Studio. This platform allows you to work through questions using an interface that mimics Blue Book so that you can practice under real testing conditions. Go ahead and use the link in the description to get free access to 500 practice questions and a practice exam.